Hey guys, and welcome back to A&J Education YouTube channel. In today's video, we have a very special guest, Anna Pang, who's an undergraduate at UCL pursuing architecture. And Anna is here to talk about how to get into UCL for architecture, what to do. And in this video, she's going to give all of her knowledge and expertise, and then give her 3 expert tips at the end for undergraduate admissions for architecture at UCL. So keep watching to the end if you're thinking of applying. And let's go. Anna, thanks so much for joining. Great to have you with us today.
Hi, Sunny. Great to be here.
Cool. And so Bartlett, is that like a sort of autonomous department of UCL, or what's the distinction?
Yeah, so when you're applying, then you would write down UCL as the university, but everyone refers to the School of Architecture as the Bartlett. And within the architecture realm, it's the Bartlett. Okay.
And admissions to Bartlett are normally, crazy competitive. So, how many people apply per place normally?
I'm not 100% sure on numbers. I think it's 1 to 10, but it could be wrong. But I know that the process is quite good at whittling down the numbers as you go.
Yeah. Just what is the process, right? So, you want to become an architect. You decided on applying for that. How do you get into Bartlett? What are the steps?
So on a really basic level, you send in your UCAS form like everyone else. You have your personal statement. But then when you're applying to architecture schools, a lot of the time you'll be asked for interviews or portfolio. So for the Bartlett, their admissions system runs as they will send you a drawing task, they call it. And this changes every year. So they might ask you to prepare a few sketches or drawings, or this year it was a video or an animation. Okay. And that's like round 1. After you pass round 1, then you might be invited for interviews where you would normally take a portfolio to the school, or this year probably over Zoom, and then you hear if you got in or not.
Okay, so that's a great overview. Let's just break it down step by step. So starting with the UCAS application, and for those who don't know, that's done through www.ucas.com. You pay £26 there and you create an application. You put UCL Bartlett as one of your choices. And what's the deadline? So the use for Bartlett, it's the standard 15th of January deadline, right?
Yes. So for architecture schools, I think they're all the standard date except for Cambridge, which is, I know that's earlier.
Yeah, Cambridge will be 15th of October. So if you're thinking of applying to UCL Bartlett for architecture, your deadline is 15th of January of the year when you are hoping to start studying. So if for example, you're hoping to start at Bartlett in September 2021, you should have applied by 15th of January 2021. Did I get that right? Yeah. In my experience, at least working with our students, it's always better to submit an early application. Would you say that makes any difference at all?
I think it's better for peace of mind to submit earlier, but the Bartlett, I think, will look through all applications. And personally, I feel like it's better to submit a strong portfolio perhaps a little bit later than submitting a weaker one earlier on. Mm-hmm. But of course, it always feels nicer to get it out of the way.
Yeah. I think the thing to remember here is a lot of the people who are applying to Bartlett will also be applying to Cambridge by 15th of October, which is quite a strong pool of candidates, right? So it's, sometimes can be better to go in that first pool and just so they have more time. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So you do an application, then personal statement. So how, and we're doing a separate video specifically on the personal statement, but just briefly, there is no architecture at school. So what do you put in the personal statement for architecture?
So for personal statements for architecture, I think it's really important to show that you're actually interested in the subject. That's something that's really key. And that's where a generic personal statement won't really fit in. Personally, from ones I've read, I think it's really great if you can have it sort of structured, almost like an essay where you talk about things that you're really interested in. So inspiration, such as architects, artists, authors, theorists. You could talk about work experiences that you've done. That's always a really great one. Books you've read. And it's just really, it's such a great opportunity to show what your initial passions are in the subject, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Look, we're gonna keep this conversation for for another video. So all the incentives for you guys to subscribe to this channel. But okay, so you have your application, you've got your personal statement. By the way, as part of the application, you need a teacher reference. So and again, because you're not studying architecture at school, it's not necessarily there isn't necessarily an obvious teacher at school who you should approach. So kind of start thinking about that early.
In fact, who wrote your UCAS reference when you applied?
I think mine was my personal tutor. So the person that I see every day just for advice. But I think I also asked for one from my art teacher or head of department, which was helpful. They're like, because architecture isn't like a school subject, it's really great to use your art department as some sort of like a source of advice and yeah, general.
Cool. Okay.
So so you submit that, and then what happens next? So you get an email from them, I'm guessing.
So like how you would receive emails from universities you apply to say you're accepted, they will send you one to tell you you can go into the next round. So for Cambridge, that would normally be asking you to, there's normally a small written task. So they might ask you to write like a short reason for why you're applying to that school, or it depends what college you've chosen. For the Bartlett, they'll ask you for the drawing task. So they'll send you the details you need. So for example, for previous years, there was the task of like a 5-minute drawing, a 10-minute drawing, a 20-minute drawing, and then they give you a theme. And for other schools, they're known to ask for digital portfolios or their own little tasks as well.
And just if we just focus again on Bartlett specifically, so the drawing task, is it something that in normal, obviously this is a COVID year, but in normal years, do you do it remotely or do you travel there to do the task?
You do it remotely. So normally they'd ask you for maybe 5 drawings and they're all meant to be timed. They give you a theme and you would do that in your own time. Normally they give you about a week, 10 days before your sort of deadline, and then you post it back to them with like a short description of why you've done each drawing normally. However, for this year, there was the option of an animation as well, which was sort of a new thing that they did.
Okay.
And when you say you post it, so, do you send it, by pigeon mail or, email, or how do you do it?
No, by mail, previously.
Okay. So what, you have to go to, put it in an envelope, go to.
Yeah, really old school.
Yeah. And if you're an applicant, let's say if you're watching this from Mexico or China or Canada, so does that still apply? You still have to mail it?
I'm not actually sure. I would imagine yes, because they're quite particular about seeing drawings in person. But I guess maybe that's why this year they started to digitalize it more, so it's a bit more accessible.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. So
and what's the timeline? So let's say you apply by 15th of Jan, you get a confirmation email, yeah, we've received your application, a couple of days later. And then is everyone invited to do the drawing task, or do they select people for this round?
As long as your personal statement, I think, is to a certain level and your grades are around the sort of AAB region, I think it's okay.
Okay.
A-levels.
Okay, so basically, perhaps a couple of people will be filtered out at this stage, but majority will be invited.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you do that. What happens then?
So after you've posted your drawing task, the pause here could be a little bit longer. And this is where they'll send you details about an interview. So for if you're doing an in-person one, they'll tell you like when to go to the department and then give you details about like when to arrive and sort of what will happen during the day. So normally you get like a tour, they'll have like a Q&A session, and then you start doing your sort of one-on-one interviews. They might also send you details of what to include in your portfolio. So a lot of the time they'll ask for drawings, paintings, extra work you've done outside of school. So Most people will make their portfolio out of their art coursework or DT, but if you, for example, haven't done these subjects at A-level, you can also bring in work that you've done in your own time, such as through work experience or with a tutor, for example.
Okay.
Yeah, and for A&J students, a lot of the time we'll do extra work with them, and and that will go as part of the portfolio. But just coming back to what you said, you mentioned the subjects that you're doing at school. Are there any subject requirements that you absolutely must have to apply for UCL Bartlett?
For UCL, there are no requirements, but they suggest perhaps art or DT and maybe maths or physics. And personally, I found that doing them was helpful because it kind of gives you the foundations of how you're going to consider the structure of the building, but also how to represent it visually, as well as it gives you a head start on sort of putting your portfolio together. But it is by no means like a requirement.
Okay.
As long as you put the work in.
Okay, but listen, putting spotlight on you personally, what did you get in your A-levels?
I did art, maths and physics, and I got 3 A's. So it was okay, but yeah.
Okay. Because there is this perception, we get emails regularly from students saying, look, I want to go for architecture, or I want to go for medicine or whatever, or, Bartlett is my dream school, but, I'm only going to have 1 A star and 2 A's, or, and they feel insecure about it. But actually, obviously 3 A's is already very good, but you don't need to be like a superhuman and get 3 A stars.
For Bartlett especially, they definitely care more about the work you're bringing in your portfolio. Even like for graduating students, a lot of the time they say, like, obviously everyone's aiming for a first when they graduate, but in the industry, they care so much more about what's in your portfolio, what skills you have, and how that makes you stand out from other candidates.
No, fair enough. And for those of you who don't know, UCL has a contextual offer scheme. So if you're coming from secondary school or particular circumstances where basically majority of people around you are not getting the grades that UCL would normally require, they view you in context. So if you're basically the best of a mediocre bunch of A-level candidates or IB candidates, that's fine as long as you include it in the application. And there is a special, basically there is a link. So we'll include the link here to UCL Bartlett. So when when you go, especially if you've been disadvantaged in your education process or have had difficulties, you should definitely explore this scheme, because they, UCL and pretty much every other university, they do, at least in my experience, do make genuine, not just kind of, for the website, but genuine efforts to widen access and to have as many students from different backgrounds as possible. I don't know, did you find that the case, or is it just something they're addressing?
I'm not too sure, to be honest. I never really thought about that. I think you kind of let your work speak for yourself, and I'm sure if you're applying with an interest in the subject, then you'll be able to kind of get there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Okay, so you've done so you've submitted the portfolio. Any more steps?
Not really. After you submitted your portfolio, you just wait for a little while. Okay. The Bartlett response time can be a little bit longer than other universities, I found. Like even Cambridge, obviously, Cambridge always sends it out in January, I think. But just don't panic. I get a lot of people send me emails like, oh, why have I not heard back? But it's totally normal. Okay. And is there an interview component as well? So when you present your portfolio, that's sort of an interview, but they normally don't ask very rigorous questions. It's more just flipping through your work, and this will be done by probably a Bartlett tutor. And then they will maybe ask you 1 or 2 questions at the end, such as maybe why architecture school or why the Bartlett. And it's a really great opportunity to be really specific about the school, because obviously very competitive. You don't want to just kind of give a substandard answer. Yeah, no, makes sense.
And for that, you obviously have to, in normal circumstances, you would travel there in person, right, to present. Okay. And in previous years, even if you're overseas, you have to travel as well, or?
No, so if you're overseas, they will tend to give you a Zoom meeting or a video call. I know that so in Asia, they have very specific tutors that will run those interviews. And yeah, I don't think it puts you at a disadvantage necessarily. We have a very diverse cohort every year.
Cool.
How big is the cohort? So how many people are taken?
I think every year it's about 100, 140, somewhere between that range. But it varies on sort of what applicants they get, or if people choose to move between years.
Okay.
And I think this has been super helpful and really, really insightful. Just as we're wrapping up, can you give us your top 3 tips? So if someone's watching, I'm an aspiring architect, I've got no clue, but Bartlett is my dream school. What are the 3 takeaways from this video I should have to help me succeed?
So 3 tips. First one would be to start early. That would be with your portfolio. If you're interested in doing architecture at the Bartlett, it's a really great thing to start looking at the anthologies or the design books, which are all available online for inspiration. Step 2 would be do your research. Are you really committed into architecture? And if so, what aspect are you interested in? It's the range of schools you can apply to are all so varied in what their key focuses are. So same for Bartlett, figure out if that's what you want. And step 3, I don't know, I'd say just be prepared. When you go to interview, don't feel too nervous. It's an opportunity to show what you're interested in, what you're passionate in, and sort of your range of talents, rather than get scrutinized for anything else.
Easier said than done, but
yeah.
no, that's super helpful. Guys, hope you enjoyed this. If you're applying to UCL or for any other university for architecture, you have questions, pop them in the comments below. If I'm fortunate, perhaps I'll persuade Anna to answer a few of your questions. But otherwise, all the best. Anna, thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. You too.